All right, hi, and welcome to the Fantasy Six Pack Network. My name is Joe Bond, founder of FantasySixPack.net. We're going to be covering the Cincinnati Bengals here with John Sheeran from A to C Sports. How's it going on, man?
It's going well, Joe. I know just got back from a fantasy convention. I've been grinding away at training camp and everything like that. So it's nice to bring both sides together here for a
Yeah,
little combo.
absolutely, absolutely. We appreciate you coming on here, and yeah, if you all can't tell yet, I have no voice, so we're going to push through this and listen to John a lot more than me. But before we get into that, though, just remind you while you're here, hit that subscribe button, the like button, leave those comments. We love to hear from you. And then jump over to fantasy6pack.net, become an all access member, get access to the award winning rankings, the draft cheat sheets, the player projections. During the year, we're going to have betting and DFS content mixed in and all that kind of stuff. So, good times over there. Use F6P pods to save 15%. All right. First question, man. Start with the quarterback here. It's no secret that the Bengals have sort of stumbled out of the starting blocks the last couple of years here, and like I was watching quarterback on Netflix, and even Joe Burrow was like, "Yeah, it's just something we do. We don't know why. It just happens." Have they fixed it this year? Like, have they figured out what to do in camp to get these guys just going from week one?
I guess we'll find out in September, right? Because there has been times in the past couple of years where it seems like the intensity gets picked up a little bit. I think the biggest thing, James Rapine of SI has mentioned this before, and I think he's kind of right on the money. I think a lot of the slow starts in recent years have had to do with Burrow being injured and not getting the full training camp, and then just kind of having to find himself in the first 6, maybe even 8 weeks of the season when they're just not where they should be in terms of the early playoff race. And then November, December comes around and he looks like the MVP caliber quarterback that he always is because he has a better feel for the rush and his timing is good and he is able to make all these plays out of structure where it's just beyond, when he has to get the ball quickly because his offensive line has never been good. So having all of this now and going through this now when he's fully healthy and he's able to be fully immersed with practices and the offense is getting practice with their starting quarterback instead of all respect to Jake Browning, he's not Joe Burrow, right? So those reps
Right.
mean something differently and the offense as a whole is firing on most, if not all cylinders right now. I don't know how that translates to the regular season action when they're facing defenses that are actually trying instead of the defenses that they're seeing them every single day. So they have, an understanding of their tendencies and everything like that. But everything that's happened since the beginning of training camp has shown good signs of that changing in September, but obviously the pressure is still immense on them to actually go out there and do it and at least get out of the gate at like 1-1, right? That hasn't happened since 2021, and of course they went to the Super Bowl that year. But this team hasn't won a like week 2 game under Zach Taylor in his entire career, and they've only won one week 1 game. So everything that they're doing right now in terms of practicing early in the morning and just getting that quality work in with their starting quarterback who's fully healthy and there's no limitations, it's all been good signs, at least from here. But again, you just got to go out there and prove it.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, right? And we always say this, right? On paper, they got a good chance to go 2-0. I think Browns and Jags, but you never know. I mean, who would have thought they would have lost week one last year? I think that was what the
Someone did.
Pats.
Someone
Yeah,
did.
did you? Oh my gosh, good call on that one.
Again, like you got to prove it, right? Until I see something differently, I need to, my eyes work better than my ears.
Yeah. Well, that's why we got people like you on here to tell us but otherwise. So over here, running back room, Chase Brown really took over last year and was just amazing. Anybody here looking like they're going to take a good chunk of the workload from him? I would expect him to still have like a larger majority of it, but like, or could we literally see him be, on the field for like 80% of these snaps and just be one of the like workhorse backs in the NFL?
It's an interesting dynamic because, interestingly enough, like he was a workhorse for his last year at college at Illinois, which was kind of unexpected considering he was like 5'10", 200 pounds, like running 300 times in the Big Ten. And that was never the expectation for him last year, really, for any time that he's been with the Bengals. He's been
Mm-hmm.
behind Joe Mixon. He was starting behind Zach Moss last year. Moss ended up suffering a broken neck in week 1, but he played through it for like 2 months. and it was very clear that it wasn't the same Zach Moss that was playing in Indianapolis the year prior. So Chase Brown emerged as just the better option, the more explosive guy out of the backfield who can obviously catch 5 balls a game as well. So I think the talent of Chase Brown keeps him on the field for at least 70-75% of the snaps this season. And they set up the running back room where there's no real guy that's really going to challenge him. I think Taj Brooks is an interesting name that we'll get to in a minute here, but like Samaje Perine is just there for third down pass blocking. Like they know who he is. He's a known commodity in that offense, having been there during that Super Bowl run in the AFC Championship run in 2022, but he's not going to take significant touches away from Chase Brown. But they don't want to repeat what happened late last year where they had to trade for Khalil Herbert because they were running Chase Brown into the ground. And I don't think you're going to see many weeks where he has like 20 carries a game, but like in that 12 to 15 range with a handful of targets per game, that's 100% the expectation. And he's going to be, again, 70-75% of this entire running back room in terms of production for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll all take that. So, and there's a lot of the expectations as well. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of Chase Brown's game. I was happy to see him finally flourish big time last year. All right, the big two, man, the 1A, the 1B, if you want to call it that. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, two just amazing receivers. I mean, who outside of them though, like who is the third target? There's a couple of guys that sort of just hang around, it feels like, but nobody's really like come on strong at all.
Yeah,
The last couple of years.
Andre Osivas
Okay.
is definitely that number 3 right now.
Okay.
He took that over last year. A bit surprising because considering they drafted Jermaine Burton and he was having a pretty promising offseason this time last year as a rookie, but I think they really liked Yoshi's improvement as a blocker in the slot, but the ability to give you a vertical threat out of that position. It gave them something differently than what they had with Tyler Boyd in years past, where he was basically a slot only, and you could only run certain routes with him because of his limited athleticism. Andre obviously was a track athlete at Princeton, but he's gained a lot more bulk, and he's kind of filled out his frame a lot better, so he's able to kind of fight for those extra yardage and fight through contact in his routes better than what he did when he was just a rookie 6th-round pick a couple of years ago. But also, he has obviously experience on the boundary, so you can move Jamar Chase into the slot a lot more often, which was the case last year. I think about 30% of his targets in his routes were coming from the slot, which were career highs for him. So Yoshi is definitely that third option in this offense. Again, when you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the field, you're going to throw the ball to them about 80-70% of the time, but Yoshi has really proven himself as a reliable red zone option, and that trust level and just foundation that he has with Joe Burrow, it can't really be understated in terms of if he needs like an ancillary outlet and defenses are keying in on your two dogs on the outside, Yoshi's going to be that next receiver, that next wide receiver that he's going to look to, and he's going to be on the field most of the time. So he's not going to put up fantasy production on a consistent basis, but there's definitely going to be weeks where he gets a little bit more than you're expecting.
Yeah, Boyd was always sort of hanging around. You could, roll the dice with him a few weeks here and there, but that's good to hear. No, the tight end room got a little more interesting just here lately. They bring in Noah Fant, who got released from Seattle. Mike Gesicki was pretty productive last year, honestly. He had a pretty good year. Is this now just like a pure split? That's I've heard that a couple of times, but it'd be good to hear from somebody who's been there.
I wouldn't count on Noah Fant being like a reliable fantasy option just yet. I think it's because Gesicki, at the end of the day, he's not really a tight end. He's just a big slot receiver. He's basically the number 3 receiver in this offense because if you treat him like wide receiver, and there's going to be packages where you have both Gesicki and Yoshi on the field at the same time, and they call that their special 12 personnel because, again, Gesicki's not really treated as a tight end in that situation. But Noah Fant was signed really to replace Eric Gall Jr., who was another Iowa tight end. He was coming on last year, and then he tore his ACL, and now he's out for this year as well because it was the same ACL that he tore in his last year at college. So they expect Noah Fant to be basically their most versatile option at the tight end position. Someone who can be an inline, someone who can line up in the slot, someone who can line up in the backfield even. So there's going to be no hats that he's not going to wear, but I don't really foresee him digging into the targets for Gesicki, who, by the way, is like, it's still Drew Sample, who's basically at the top of that tight end room, but he's basically there to block anyways. So the production out of this room is really going to still come from Gesicki. They invested the 3-year deal in him. I don't foresee his production really dipping or anything like that. There could be a situation where Fant really catches strong, maybe in mid-season, and then he becomes a more tantalizing option, but I don't expect him to be a huge factor that really threatens the production from Gesicki because he's just so already worked into the offense. There's a trust level with him as well. They really figured out how to use him when T. Higgins went down last year. And if a situation like that were to happen again, because Higgins does have that injury history, I do foresee him even getting a little bit more production akin to what he did last year.
Yeah. All right, so we'd like to finish things up here, asking the same question. Just, is there a player you've seen in this offense that going a little under the radar, lesser known name guy that fantasy managers maybe not drafting or maybe taking with their last pick or something? Just somebody we should keep an eye on.
Yeah, Charlie Jones is that guy for me right now who's been injured for most of the first 2 years of his career. He was actually the receiver drafted ahead of Andrei Osavash in the 2023 draft. I think it was a fourth-round pick, but he's dealt with a thumb injury, a knee injury. He's really just made his impact as a kick returner on special teams, but this has really been his first fully healthy training camp entering the regular season, and he's looked really promising. He's even gotten some reps with the first-team offense, but again, he's no higher than wide receiver 4 on this depth chart, and that's basically almost a death sentence being behind the top 3 right now. But if there's a situation where, again, injuries were to happen in the middle of the season, I think Charlie Jones is positioning himself to have a larger role in the actual passing offense than he did in the first 2 years. Again, the bar is extremely low because he's basically a non-factor, but he's made impressive strides in training camp. He's turning a lot of heads, and that's going to keep him on the roster, and it's going to potentially open up doors if things were to happen in the regular season. So I wouldn't use a draft pick on him unless you're in like a 30-round draft or whatever the case may be, but it's just someone to keep your eye on for sure.
No, that's good to know. Maybe I'll go over to my dynasty league and figure out how I can get him on there. You never know. All right, man. Well, thank you for coming on. This was great information. Before we close out, though, let's give you a chance to let everybody know where they can find you, what you got going on.
Well, I appreciate you having me on, Joe. You can find my work at a2zsports.com/Cincinnati. You can find YouTube videos of mine as well at A2Z Sports Cincinnati on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, however you consume your video media nowadays. And also do a podcast for the Believe Podcast Network, the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast with my co-host, Anthony Cosenza. You can find an episode a week on there as well. So check it out if you can.
Good stuff, man. All right. Thank you so much. And we will see you all next time.